Cue the cheesy podcast music.
Welcome to Megafest, where we don't just manifest, we Megafest. I'm your host, Megs Malloy. I'm creating a community of silly and soulful working moms who are mostly happy, but know they're capable of more. More self-love, more self-esteem, more self-trust, more calm, joy, natural highs, more magic in the world, and more laughter. Each week, me and my guests will bring you tips and tricks on how to make the most of your one precious life. And we're going to make them effective and efficient because ain't nobody got time for that. I believe in you. I see the light in you. I want you to shine your light. I want you to become all that you're capable of. So let's hang out. Let's Megafest together. What? Episode 8. Yeah. Woo. Thank you for being here. Yay. What will you have to drink? That's what I'm wondering. I always ask my guests, what do they want when they come to the studio? But what are you going to have today? I am drinking some green tea with ginger. It is one of my favorite teas. I love hot tea. I love the winter because then I can drink hot tea and I don't sweat. No better reason to love winter. So I'm kind of wondering if I should read today's guest bio or if I should just launch into the story of why and how I'm having him on the show. I think I'll just tell you why I'm having him on the show and the little funny story that goes behind that first, and then I will read his bio. So, way back in the 1900s, I went to high school with this girl, Monique No. She was the kind of adolescent who just had her shit together. She was the student body president our senior year, and we played soccer together. And I even got invited over to her house a couple times to listen to the Pulp Fiction soundtrack together. It was really fun. I've always admired Monique. And Monique ended up marrying this guy who went to the boys' high school, because we went to an all-girls high school, Keith Bonnici. And in fact, I remembered while I was talking to Keith that I was at their wedding. I totally forgot about that. And then fast forward many years, around 2008, Keith and I used to run into each other a lot because we were working in the same business park. I had an advertising sales job for a major company, and he had this super cool job at a tech startup that was creating a skee ball app, I think. And that's way cooler than TV advertising because skee ball is one of the greatest games ever invented. Thank you, Keith, for bringing that to our phones. And thanks to Facebook, we all stayed in touch. I would normally just see Keith going on these epic vacations, going to local sports teams, like especially the Dodgers and the Lakers, and just generally enjoying his kids. But not too long ago, I noticed that Monique had posted a congratulations to Keith on publishing a little book called 150 Happy Facts. And I thought that was right up our alley, wasn't it, Poo-taters? We just love happy facts. So I reached out to Keith and said, hey, would you want to come on my podcast and talk about your book? And I'm so appreciative that Keith is on it. He's just on it. He wrote back right away, very positive and responsive. He said he would love to be a guest and made it really easy to coordinate with him. And I just really appreciate when people do that. So thank you, Keith. When he wrote back, I looked at his email handle and it said, whatever, the Happy Broadcast. And I'm like, I went to Google to look it up. And wouldn't you know, Keith was way more than an author of just this little book about 150 happy facts. He is the co-founder of the Happy Broadcast and the whole app, which together has over 1 million social media followers. It's kind of a shame that I lead with that, but I was just kind of shocked that he had created such a following, and not to mention the amazing work that they are doing in the world to help people create a gratitude and mindfulness practice, and also inspire people to take action to make our planet a better place. We'll talk more about the whole app, and if you haven't heard of it, go check it out. Because as Keith explains in this episode, we work so many hours, we sleep so many hours, we maybe work out so many hours, but how many hours or even minutes do we put toward our mood? And if we've learned anything, a good mood sometimes doesn't just happen. You really have to cultivate it and work it like a muscle. So go check out the whole app. The Happy Broadcast is so worth your time, whether you're going to listen to their podcast or actually you should go and look at their social media, because part of the great thing about the Happy Broadcast is the artwork that Mauro, the Italian artist and Keith's business partner, has created. The whole Instagram feed is so joyful. It's the good news channel you've been looking for, because I know everybody at some point has said, I wish there was a place just to get good news. Well, here it is. Thank you, Keith and Mauro. So here's Keith's official bio. Keith is originally from Malta, which is in Italy, and now lives in Los Angeles with his wife, Monique, and their 3 young boys, Luca, Dominic, and Lorenzo. Very good Italian names. Keith was a corporate lawyer at the global law firm of Latham and Watkins, LLP, before becoming an entrepreneur in the technology space. After serving as an executive at a number of tech companies, Keith founded his own mobile technology company in 2012, which he later sold to a public company. Woohoo! Cha-ching! That's not part of the bio. I'm just adding that in. Since then, Keith has focused his time and effort on passion projects that he hopes can help make the world a better place for his children. Keith has lived in Europe, Asia, and the United States, and enjoys traveling, socializing with friends, and anything sports related. He has a passion for new technologies that can have a positive impact on society. Some of the things Keith and I talked about were how he came to co-found the Happy Broadcast and the whole app, the nuances of happiness, and so much more. I loved everything we talked about, but I was really blown away, in particular by one thing that Keith said, and let's see if you can guess which one it is. Another thing that you should know is that for some reason, the universe was conspiring against us and the audio was delayed by about 5 full seconds. It was like being on Skype in 2001. It was it was bizarre. It was surreal. It was hard, but we made it work. So some of the parts of the conversation are kind of awkward and we talk over each other, but I tried to clean that up as much as I could in post. I know you're waiting for it. The word of the day was Oasis. Ooh, yeah. Oasis means refuge or relief. And Keith did a great job of using the word of the day. So without further ado, please let me introduce my guest today, Keith Bonnici. Woo, Keith Bonnici! Yeah! Welcome to Megafest!
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yay! You are so good. You are so admired and adored here at Megafest. And I'm so grateful that you were taking this time to share with us about your project, which is so important. But before we get into that, like any good Irishman, I'll ask you, when you come to my studio, what'll you have to drink?
Oh my gosh, you said Irish, so I feel like I should be asking for some sort of hard whiskey of some sort. I will go with water today. I'll go with water.
That's good. Do you like ice, or do you like a room temperature?
Definitely. Ice definitely. There's actually ice is actually linked to reducing anxiety. If you haven't heard that, so I'll go with ice water today.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! I didn't know that. Yeah. My 4-year-old son, and you can appreciate this because I think you have a 3 or 4-year-old. He's still not really saying his R's very well, so he always requests, "Will we cold water?" And so that's what you will get. So, will we cold water?
Perfect. I'll take it.
Okay, good. When we're at a party, this less American of a question, which is, what are you famous for?
Famous, famous is a word I wouldn't use, but I think to my family, I'm famous for the guy that's now home a lot. If the outside world wanted to kind of know who I was, it's probably my current gig, which is I'm one of the co-founders and partners for the Happy Broadcast and Whole, which is a project that's focused on positivity and sort of life hacks as they relate to helping promote a happier mindset, sort of a mental health angle of the project, but more focused on positivity and easy habits that people can build that can really change their outlook on everyday situations and lead to sort of a happier state of mind, which is the goal.
Wow. So in this hectic world, would you say it's a bit of an oasis?
There you go. Nice to use there. Yes, I definitely say Oasis is where I go with the Happy Broadcast. So yeah, I mean, the history is this is not a traditional path that you would expect me to be in. Like a lot of people who knew me when I was maybe in high school or college would have never thought I would be the Happy Broadcast guy or one of the Happy Broadcast guys, because I was very sort of goal-oriented, regimented, chasing the next thing always, like whether it was promotions in my career or whether it was, monetary wealth. And it wasn't until 5, 6 years ago, and more so during the early parts of COVID, where I really tried to do a mind shift and focused on myself and what I actually cared about most, as opposed to what I thought the world told me I should care about. And so that was a pretty major shift change in terms of my priorities in life and what I focused my efforts and time on. I was basically the first patient of what we're trying to do with the Happy Broadcast and Whole. And I did the things that now we are pushing to the world through the Happy Broadcast. And I did them because they're actually helpful and they're working. I'm a super type A anxious person by nature. Firstborn kid, parents are all focused on you, which creates that sort of anxiety and kind of drive. And it never really hit me to a point where it was, I had a miserable and happy existence, but I definitely could always have been happier. And so when I started focusing on the me and focusing on kind of looking at things from a different angle, it really did help. And that's what we are pushing out with what we're doing with the Happy Broadcast. And we get a ton of feedback from folks. The Happy Broadcast is my oasis.
Oh, so good. During the pandemic, you changed your outlook and your priorities. What would you say was now your priority?
Yeah. I went from working 24/7 and being on a plane to the East Coast and doing deals to locked in a house with my 3 kids and wife. Right. We during the pandemic we moved up to Ventura because we got a place there. And for a guy who was going 100 miles an hour all the time to just stop for an entire year, I went through sort of cycles. Like the first month, you're like, this is great. You're drinking way too much alcohol because you're at home with nothing to do, and then you're like, wait. I put on a bunch of weight and I haven't moved. This needs to stop. So then you start to focus, okay, what can I do? And I started exercising, every day and spending time with my kids and, doing things we never did as a family, playing board games and things like that. And it really, after like 6 months, I realized that I'd never been happier. And so it got me to kind of think like this perpetual chase that I was on, this sort of, there's no achievement that is the end point. There's always a new thing to go chase was not really, it was fulfilling, but it wasn't really happiness. And so COVID got me to kind of refocus on my priorities and said, who cares if I take 2 years longer to get to the goal that I wanted to get to on the business side? If during that 2 years, I get to see every one of my kids' baseball games and volunteer at their school and spend time with my wife and do all the things that I learned during COVID were actually what made me happy. So that's how COVID shifted me.
Oh, awesome. Because you are so driven and what I know of you as a former lawyer and, a very driven person, I imagine that you did watch the news quite a bit. So do you still watch the news or is that do you only focus on good news now?
My news consumption definitely shifted, right? Like I was, as a lawyer, I was a corporate M&A lawyer, and then I transitioned to a corp dev business guy. So I was always interested in financial news and markets, things like that. And on the flip side, I was watching, CNN 24/7, especially during COVID because, there was with Trump and with COVID, there was so much going on. It was like news all the time. And that was actually around the same time that I started working with Mauro on the Happy Broadcast and learning why he originally had started the Happy Broadcast. And it all kind of came full circle and started to make sense because if you watch CNN for 12 hours a day, and not just CNN, any major news, right? Just different slants on the same stuff. In a 12-hour day, you literally watch the same stories 10 times. And they just keep hammering you with the same 10 things, right? Over and over and over again. At some point, like what you hear becomes your reality. And so if all you're hearing is Trump said something that was super offensive and COVID is killing all these people and China's locking down and the environment's falling apart and the world is on fire, like you start to just all of a sudden feel that and believe it. And that's actually why that broadcast originally started 4 or 5 years ago. My business partner, Mauro, he suffers from climate anxiety. And when he told me what that was, I was like, what are you talking about? Never heard of that. It just makes no sense. The reality of it is you don't realize at the time, but all the things that he was hearing about how the world is falling apart, how plastic's everywhere and how the rainforest is dead and how species are dying. It was just too much, and it made him a very anxious person. And so, as a counter to that, he started to, force himself to try to find something positive about the environment because there is a world out there that has to be some positive stuff going on. And he started to read Reddit subthreads and all sorts of things to get that positive information. And he started to feel like it helped him. And he's an artist by nature. He's actually a fairly well-known artist and creative. And he started to just illustrate the positive things that he was reading for his own benefit. And he put it on Instagram and his friends would like it. And within months, celebrities were sharing it and it kind of exploded and blew up into what it came to be, which is the channel. But yeah, so news consumption definitely was causing me anxiety that I didn't realize, and focusing on looking at positive news or reducing the amount of negative news is definitely something that I felt has helped me personally and seems to help a lot of the people that follow the channel.
For sure. I will say when I came to the Happy Broadcast and I started scrolling the Instagram feed, I did find myself happier, like instantly. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was it's so cool. It's so good. Yeah.
But that broadcast basically started as this just positive illustrations that went out there, right? Like I mentioned. And then when I started working with Mauro, we did a book. We did another book. We're actually about to do a third book. And it was all about, look, there's this positive content. Let's distribute it across as many channels as we can. So we did TikTok, we did Instagram. Doing the research on the things we were posting about, you start to learn about a whole bunch of different things in the mental health space, right? And I'm not talking hard mental health where it's sort of your psychology and medications and things like that. That's specialists, experts. It has all sorts of use cases in the world that are positive and that people should take advantage of to the extent they need it. There's this kind of concept of light mental health, I want to call it. Everything that you do on a daily basis that impacts how you think and view the world. There's tons of research out there that we found since that habitual behavior drives 80% of what we do every day. You're subject to what your habits tell you you're going to do, right? And so the idea is can we retrain our habits? And are there things that we can turn into sort of habitual behaviors that impact our mental health? And so, or our happiness. I don't want to say mental health, I'll say our happiness. And so the answer is yes. There's a ton of research from things as simple as just a smile. A smile triggers certain things in your brain that releases endorphins and makes you happier, or oxytocin makes you happier, or a hug, or a walk, or making your bed, brushing your teeth. All these things can actually build as building blocks to impact your happiness. And so that's kind of where we are going with Happy Broadcast. We do positive stuff 3-4 times a week, positive news, because positivity is one of those things that can help you. But we're also building on top of that in terms of promoting habitual behaviors and habit training that can help as well. Things like expressing gratitude and a gratitude journal, which very few people do. I never did until recently, and I found it to be a part of my daily life now. Routines like making your bed. I don't like to make my bed. I never really thought about doing it on a daily basis outside of making it look good when people came by and walked into the room. But the reality of it is by starting your day with making your bed, it actually creates that you've accomplished something already for the day and you've cleaned up the space around you and you start your day from a position of feeling good about where you're going, right? So there's all these little hacks that people don't think about, but they exist that you can do, and small changes can actually lead to a better mindset of how you approach the day.
Absolutely. I have heard that for airplanes or ships, if their navigation is off even 1%, they'll end up in a whole nother continent. And it is the same for our own daily habits, right? If we can just dial it in 1%, 1%, 1%, in the long run, we're going to be so much better off. The growth is compound.
Yeah, that's a good analogy on the plane. It's a lot, right? So where to start and how to do things. We're all so busy, and nobody has time to start thinking about all these things that you can do to help be happier. But if you think about it, like if happiness is the goal, and most people would say, if you really boil it down to it, their goal in life is just to be happy, or their goal for their kids is to be happy, maybe successful, but happiness is the kind of primary driver. If happiness is the goal, we spend 30 minutes an hour, multiple hours a day working out for our physical health to look good, right? But we don't spend any time exercising our happiness, our mental health, right? It just, there's a big gap in terms of how we approach ourselves. We focus a lot on physical health, which is great. And there's tie-ins to happiness and mental health, but mental health really should be where we get some focus. And so just 5 minutes a day, of doing something that impacts your mental health is something that everybody should do. And what you find is you'll do more and more as you see the results, right? Like if you lift weights once a day for 10 minutes and you start to see muscles, then you want to go 20 minutes a day, right? Same thing with mental health. If you're spending 5 minutes a day doing a simple journal or a mood track or something, you start to be happier and like, holy crap, it ends up being a lot of what you do. Finding a way to start small, and I've got tons of examples and we can talk about, but that's what I would push on people to really invest your 5 minutes in your mental health, because you invest tons of time in other things that are less important to you.
For sure, because our whole entire world happens between our ears. The only person that you're going to live with for your entire life is yourself. And so if you can get your mind right and make your brain, your inner dialogue to be a beautiful garden, then why would you not do that? Why are you going to make yourself suffer? And there are these tools available to us that, like you're saying, we know about, like gratitude or mindfulness, or not feasting on the terrible news that's out there and choosing to look at good news can make us feel better. And hacking those brain chemicals too.
100%. 150 years ago, people came to the United States, they're like fleeing Europe and coming to make a new living, and like everything's so hard. They're grinding for their next meal, for their next work. They go through cycles, the Great Depression. Like they didn't have time to think about happiness and mental health. They were trying to just survive, right? And we're fortunate in the time we live now, there's so much bad that we can focus on, but there's a mental health revolution going on right now. There's so many different businesses and funded companies and conversations and athletes and yourself, and much like people are focused on it, right? And it's really leading the way, and it's coinciding with the fact that we do have a societal mental health problem, right? It's clearly out there. And so it's starting to all come full circle now that we're seeing the need to focus on it, and focusing on it is something that people are doing in many different ways, whether it's working with a specialist and getting the help you need, or whether you're just trying to do small things that incrementally make the world better, or your own self better. Those are all tie into the same topic, which we're trying to accomplish here, which is a happier state of mind. Imagine if everybody in the world was happier, there'd be way less negativity in terms of things that people do, right? Because a lot of our behaviors are driven by how we feel. And so if I'm feeling grateful, feeling happy, I'm less likely to go kill somebody or do something terrible that hurts society or throw plastic on the ground, right? Because it just doesn't coincide. So focusing from the between the head on out is definitely a good way to move the world forward, I think. And that's kind of why, we're doing what we're doing. And I think why you're doing what you're doing as well.
Oh, so true, Keith. So true. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Just kidding. What came first, the app or the social media?
So social media came first. So my partner, Mauro, brilliant Italian guy, moved to the States about 5-6 years ago in his late 30s, early 40s. He's a very accomplished illustrator, creative. He's done TV shows for Netflix, things like that. He's now actually a creative director at WhatsApp at Meta for his day job. But he started it, like I said, as an outlet for himself creatively. He was an artist, an illustrator. He was burdened by all the negative news out there and started looking at positive news and illustrating it. And it took off. Once it took off, I started working with him as a friend because he was introduced to me. I was bored. It was early, before COVID, but right about before COVID was about to happen. He needed some help on my book deal paperwork and a potential TV deal paperwork. So I just started helping him with businessy stuff. After a couple months, I was spending so much time on it and I wanted to spend more and more on it. And someone actually approached him to potentially sell the Happy Broadcast, and he didn't want it because it was his like purpose. I said, look, don't sell it. I'm into this. And if you want, I'll come in and I'll help make this something even more, right? Because his mission is to make the Happy Broadcast, to make it everyone's Oasis. He started to work with me on different ways to kind of get what he was doing and to expand on it, which was right in my wheelhouse because I was a business guy. I had built and sold the company and I just liked business. And so we decided, look, let's not ruin what is so good and valuable, because we were getting hundreds of people posting messages to us and direct messages on Instagram telling us how this is their best part of their day or how impactful this is and how it's changed with their lives, etc. It's just really surprising, deep stuff. And so we want to go and be like, okay, we're going to start making t-shirts and books and products and selling them and just turning the channel into like a traditional like Instagram channel that's kind of a business. So what we decided to do is we said, look, we're doing positive stuff on social. Let's expand the channel. Let's go on TikTok. Let's go on Twitter, etc. So we did that and we started working with people to do that. And then we said, in order to grow, we need to fund. And so we were funding it ourselves and fortunate enough to where I could put in some money to do new things and hire some people for TikTok, etc. But it was like, how do we make this sustainable and how do we add value? And so the idea was everybody on our channel, the audience we have is of a certain type. They're looking for ways to improve themselves or looking for ways to improve their happiness, right? And the people around them. Very avid audience that's very pro-environment, environmentalist causes, pro-animal rights. Like it just, the nature of the content that Morrow has produced over the years lends itself to that. So that's our audience. We want to do something that can help people be happier. And Morrow had this idea for this app, and we started kind of going back and forth and whiteboarding the idea. And the idea was, how do we create an app that can be sort of the MyFitnessPal of happiness? An app that gives you ideas of things to do and tracks your activity, that pushes you toward a happier mental state. And that tied into all the research about, okay, a smile can help you with this, a hug can do with this, journaling, gratitude journaling, breathing exercises, meditation, all the things that are sort of life hacks, happiness hacks, as I call them. How do we make it into sort of this daily companion thing that can every day help you build on this and have a journey toward a happier state? And so we were like, let's do it. So we put in a bunch of our own money. We worked with the development team to build sort of a prototype of the app. And then we put it in the wild. The idea was we have this app. It's free. We'll monetize it later with sort of premium features that we can create that's not necessary to the app, but nice have. So people don't have to get them, but if they want to, they can, as a way to support kind of what we're building. And so we launched it. We put it out there. I still consider it beta, right? Even though it's now been out there for a while and it's got thousands of people using it, on a daily basis. It started to just tear life of its own. And we're in the position now where we still do what we've always done on the Happy Broadcast, but we show in stories the app so people can be exposed to it. And then once they're in the app, they can use it as much as they want and give us feedback. And so we're continuing to get feedback from users of what they use and what they like and don't like, and continuing to spend a lot of time building on top of the app. It's nowhere near where it's going to be. We feel like we have just barely scratched the surface on it. And then that kind of will allow itself to grow and recycle all of that revenue. Happy Broadcast is a business, but it's a negative. Like we fund it. We don't take from it. Long term, I think as we grow, the more we can do, the more we can actually have resources to do more stuff with. The chicken, I guess, came before the egg, and the chicken is the Happy Broadcast, the egg being the app. But we'll see what the egg hatches into in the future.
You must have some success stories from the app, and you were saying that you had gotten many DMs, direct messages about how it's affecting people's lives. Do you have any particular success stories from the app?
As a general thing, like the app is like, if you haven't tried it, you should definitely try it. I think we have like 4.8 out of 5-star reviews on the platforms we're on. So people like it. So far, most of the early feedback was, it just feels so happy and welcoming because it's very, Morrow's style as an artist is put into the app. It's very bubbly and colorful and very kind of a happy place, right? It's a happy oasis, I guess is the word. Once you get past the visual, right, then it's okay, what is the function? And it's built in a way that to start from basically self-awareness of how you're feeling. So just simple like daily mood track is something we really kind of put front and center for people to do. And as they mood track and they kind of go through the funnel of how are they feeling, why are they feeling that way, it kind of brings away that awareness. And based on how they're feeling, on the back end, we use data to suggest something that they should try. So if someone's feeling tired or black because they're tired and work is making them tired, the app may suggest something like take a nap or do a breathing exercise as a way to kind of tailor the activity that we want them to build the habit for into how they're feeling that day. So that's how the progression happens. And then once you're in that progression on a daily basis, and there's some gamification to show you some insights and how you're feeling and how you're tracking and your pacing and everything. And if you get into it and really commit to sort of 20 days to it, you then start to want to do more. So you start to add your own habits and things like that. The feedback we got originally was just visual, like it's great. But now that we have people that have been using it for 90 days, 120 days, we're starting to get feedback like, oh, can we make this feature? Because I'm really finding that the mood tracking is helpful, but I want to be able to say a different mood than you guys have. Or the breathing exercise is great. I need more different kind of breathing exercises. Or the meditation is amazing, but you only have 7. Can we do more meditation? So we're starting to get feedback on via feature requests that show us what's being successful in terms of how people are using the app. In terms of broad success stories, like those like heartstring tugging things like that on Instagram, we get a lot. We've gotten things like, this saved my life, or, I was so down and depressed and I started following your channel and it's gotten me to think a different way. Like we get that more than I ever thought was possible, to be honest. That's very fulfilling. If we don't get a single user in the app to stick around long term, but we're getting that kind of impact, like we've won, right? In terms of why we're doing this project. It's nice to be in a position, both Mara and myself, Mara has a day job, I have things that I do, but this is not something we do for work. It's not work. This truly is like what we would do if we had $1 billion and all the time in the world, this is what we would spend our time doing. It allows us to move gradual and slow, and it allows us to do things in a way that I think are not burdened by a timeline. We have to just get this done by now or this fails kind of thing. So success stories definitely coming from feedback on the app in terms of what's being successful on the app, but also more so from feedback on the impact that the positive news we put out there is having on people.
That is so wonderful. What a great opportunity for you to be able to do that and help so many people. And that must give you all the good brain chemicals too, because if you are of service to others.
I'm at a point in my life where I get the most satisfaction having an impact. For my career, when I was building my company, I was gone 9-10 months out of the year traveling all over the country and world. And I missed, ages 0 to 7 of my kids. Since then, making up for lost time now, right? Like I coach every one of their teams. I volunteer at their schools. I do everything trying to kind of, relive experiences I missed. I find that what makes me happiest right now is having an impact. And so whether it's impact on a business that I advise, right? Like helping them grow their business, or a kid that I coach, or my son, my oldest son, who's a high school freshman now, like he's in a time now that's so hard normally for kids in terms of their adolescent period, and being able to just tell him he's doing great, or aware of what he's struggling with and trying to offer something that makes him change his mindset to be, happier. That to me is like the happiness of my oldest kid is like truly the current thing on my list as my agenda item number 1, because I never had that as kids. My parents were so busy working and never got to focus on, am I happy, right? If I can help and my kids end up happier because of it, that is definitely an impact that makes me feel good. And being able to do that on a grander scale through the platform we have with Happy Broadcast, I'm just so thankful to Morrow that he had this idea 4 or 5 years ago to start this, and that he partnered with me to bring me along, because it's truly been a life-changing 2 years, and I can't imagine the next 40 years not being this. So that's definitely grateful for that.
So good. I went through my own burnout, and it sounds like you kind of went through your own burnout as well as a parent, a working parent, because we can get so caught up in the daily kind of like, it's okay, this is what I'm doing, I'll get through it. And, you like you were saying, you were achieving. And then I think the pandemic helped a lot of us slow down and really realize that maybe that's not the way that we need to be doing things. And I, like you, feel very fortunate that I could take some time off and put my energy toward my children as well. Yeah. And it really is so rewarding. And I'm so happy for you. It really just makes my happy, like my solar plex just like rejoice for you, because that is so wonderful. I've only seen your kids on social media, but they just look so fun. It was neat to see you during the pandemic have all your hobbies and your projects unfold as they did, and what a wonderful time for you guys.
Yeah, no, it's great. We're fortunate. I mean, look, I guess the thing is everybody has got their own journey, right? And everybody starts from a different place. Like, I'm fortunate. I start from a place of abundance in terms of what I have around me, and love and people, as well as things, right? But there's many people, many people, both in the United States and elsewhere. A lot of our followers are actually international. It's like 30% US, 70% outside the world. And their situation is much different. And I think if you boil it down to its core, right, happiness exists at the lowest end of the socioeconomic spectrum and at the highest end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Everyone has their own happiness moment or place, their own oasis, right? The thing that I would say is when you're hearing about somebody's story, and it's very easy to say, and my natural inclination is always to say, yeah, but that's them. Look at them. Like they've got this, or yeah, but it's easy to be that way because you have a simple life and our mine's more complicated. Or look, they're a billionaire. Of course they're happy. They have everybody serving them whatever they need. But the reality of it is if I, by my nature, naysayer, doubter, not an easy person to trust others, like if I can change myself and say, let me start from, okay, this is good, instead of the glass is half empty, right? Like if I see somebody on the news talking about, a topic, instead of me saying, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, let me say, that's interesting. Let me think about it. And just that little initial reaction, that trigger, that switch, you can condition your brain to start from there, to start from a place of positive energy or start from a place of gratitude. Everything becomes easier. You can still disagree and think the person saying what he's saying is wrong, but it no longer is a contentious wrong. It's I understand, I listen to it. It's not right. The way you express what you think becomes less vitriol, less negative. In a world of today, like if you go on Twitter, right, the normal thing on Twitter is to be like, oh, this person knows what he's talking about. And it creates this cycle of just like, this guy's bashing, this guy bashing, this guy bashing, this guy. And then it just becomes this circle of just hate, in a way, like versus let me start by saying, interesting. Have you considered this, right? Just the way we approach conversation, it can change a cycle. Like if politicians didn't come out with negging somebody as opposed to listening, right? If the way we approached things was from a position of understanding and compassion and empathy versus let me prove you wrong, the world would be completely different. The more people like you and me and everybody out there can start to impact their own kids to think that way, or the people around them to think that way, I mean, that's just the path to a better planet, right? And so that's, definitely, I keep going back to it, fortunate that I was able to become exposed to Morrow and this platform in a way that got me so involved and changed the way that I look at things.
Keith, preach. Yes. And the way I think of it is curiosity. Come from a place of curiosity instead of defensiveness. Everything you're saying, 1,000%. And there is a lot of divisiveness and people who, if you were saying one thing, they're going to say the opposite just for ego or whatever it might be. But there is this idea out there, positivity, but then people are like, oh, but toxic positivity. But I heard you mention something about empathy, which is the missing link that I think toxic positivity is missing empathy. And I think that you expressed that's still important. So do you get any haters coming at you like, oh, this is just toxic positivity?
I mean, probably. I don't remember directly, but there's so many comments. I mean, we've got tens of millions of millions of comments over the 5 years. I forget. We tried to count it once, and I'm sure that, there's your percentage of them that's negative. But I think what's really cool was we're in a bubble. Our channel is people who sought out positivity, right? And so they're mostly in favor. And so the people that are sort of negative in terms of what we're doing tend to be pushed down the list in the comments and the feedback because people just aren't there for that. But I do think that, look, life is not all positive roses, right? Like there's tons of negative things that happen in the world. I think the goal is not to be only positive all the time. The goal is to distribute into the stream of information some positive stuff. Doom scrolling is a term, and we've done a ton about it with research and content about it. But if I'm looking at TikToks on negative stuff and I'm watching those videos to completion, like that algorithm tells it to show me more of that stuff. And so I get into this like never-ending cycle. And to break that cycle, there needs to be channels like Happy Broadcast or Good News Movement or Good News Network or all these different channels that are out there that are putting that positive stuff out in the world so that your feed is broken up by some positivity. And that makes the overall consumption of content not toxically positive because it's not all positive, right? Like even CNN has a good news kind of segment, right? Like they've got people are starting to sort of filter it in there. So yeah, I mean, look, if I were to say to you, everything's great all the time, positive information, positive news, that's naive, right? Like that's not what's real. What I'm saying and what we're doing is not telling you that the world isn't what it is. What we're telling you is, hey, by the way, there's actually some good stuff happening. You've heard the world's on fire and that the rainforest is being destroyed. Well, did you hear that there's a guy in Indonesia who's planted a tree a day for 25 years and now there's a forest there? That's positive and it exists. So nobody knows about that. They know about the destroyed rainforest and the chaos and catastrophes that are happening there, but there's stuff out there. So let's surface it up. That's the mission.
That's amazing. A tree a day, and now he's got a forest. That is the 1%. You know, that's the whole new continent. You got a whole new forest. Oh, what a wonderful thing that you're bringing this into the world.
Thank you.
You and
It's
Morrow.
good.
This is an awesome episode of Megafest, but I'm just going to call a quick TO to tell you about the Soulgasm Society. My mission is to create a community of supportive and uplifting women who want to know how to make their one short precious life all the more joyful, add in some play and celebration, and learn the science behind how do you make your brain happy, all the techniques on how to calm your nervous system, and how to not fly off the mommy hamster wheel, because we can't all stop working, and you can't really get rid of your kids for more than 2 weeks. You gotta deal with it, and the best way to make your life happy is from the inside out. If you're not gonna do it for yourself, do it for your kids. They will see a difference. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, and there is so much truth to that. So the Soulgasm Society is your answer. Come join us. You can click the link in the bio of my Instagram or the link in the show notes. I can't wait to have multiple simultaneous soulgasms with you. All right, now back to Megafest. Gotta go back about how you met, because was it like the Italian connection? Were they like, hey, you're Italian, you're Italian, like you guys should talk?
Yeah, no. A good friend that used to work for me when he was just coming out of school has become a very successful tech entrepreneur. He was Morrow's boss at his last company. Morrow used to work at Jib Jab. Remember those dancing e-cards? I don't know if you've seen them, but that's the brainchild of a number of folks. But
love Jib Jab.
Yeah, creatively it's Morrow's design. His team has done all those cards basically. So he used to be there, and my friend Paul introduced us and just hit it off right away. I was bored. I was advising some companies, and it was fine, but I was looking for a little bit more to do that was not just advice, to actually get my hands dirty. And he connected us. I started talking to him. I helped him on the book. I helped him with the TV contracts. I started to do the content stuff, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So yeah, Morrow, that's how he and I came to meet. And it's one of those things, like I'm not a guy that believes in like love at first sight. With my wife, it was like we met, we got to know each other, and love grew, right? I'm not a guy that's like very like instant connection. That's just not, I'm more conservative than that in terms of my relationships and how I approach relationships. But with him, it really was like immediate comfort. Maybe it was the Italian connection. Maybe it was the immigrant connection. Both he and I are immigrants. Maybe it was the space that we were both in, or the person that connected us was both a very close friend of ours, each mutual. But whatever it was, we connected quickly, and it's literally like, it's easy. Like there's no holding back. It's a very comfortable conversation, very Italian. Like you can tell we talk a lot with the hands and with the mouth. It's an Italian thing.
I love the positive news.
Yeah,
Gotta keep more of that going.
Exactly.
So you talked a little bit about your children and how their happiness is really important and giving them that one-on-one attention. What else do you do with them to create a daily practice of gratitude or positivity, or like what is important to you as a parent to teach them?
That could be a 5-hour podcast that we wouldn't even scratch the surface. I think if I try to really generalize it, right, like I do a lot of thinking about my kids, and I mean, they're my purpose, like at the moment, right? And so I think each kid is so different. It's crazy coming from the same gene pool and the same upbringing. They're so different. What I try to do is actually really try to identify what each of them needs. I'm not great at it. I'm impatient. Like I'm so busy that it's hard for me sometimes to give them the time and the grace they need. But what I do is I try to focus on each of them. So my oldest adolescent going to high school, wanting him to do well in school and life, and seeing how, as the oldest, all the pressure on him because he's the first grandkid, he's the first kid. I see a lot of pressure. So with him, I try more to tell him, you're doing great. It's okay. Trying to let him fail because he's such a bright kid and a talented kid that, we don't let kids fail these days, and he doesn't fail much. And so trying to focus on his failure as a way for him to understand that it's normal. In business, like they tell you, like fail fast. Like that's the goal. I failed so much growing companies. Like, oh, this didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. You don't see them as a failure, but they're failures. They're little failures because you're always moving forward. In life, we don't highlight the failures enough so that people get used to failing and not scared of it, because teaching my oldest to not be scared to fail is going to allow him to take more risks and do more things. With him, I focus through baseball because he plays baseball, and baseball is the perfect sport to teach failure because 3 out of 10 times you're hitting the ball, 7 out of 10 you're failing. And like the other day I was saying, hey, look, just like in baseball where you strike out, there's another at bat. The next at bat matters. The last one doesn't. If you get a B on a test with him, because he's so rare for him, that's an at bat. Your next at bat's the more important one. Like, don't sit there and worry about what you missed or why you missed it. Like, learn it, move on, and get there. So with him, I focus on being welcoming of failure, because I do think that conditions you to be less scared of it and ultimately less impacted negatively by the failures of life. Because life's hard. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to fail in relationships and all sorts of different things, right? With the middle one, he's stereotypical middle child, right? Has not gotten the focus and attention of the older child or the baby. And as a result, he's an anxious kid. Again, super talented in his own way, EQ off the charts, but he's a nervous kid. He's always worried about tests at school and always worried about not doing well. And with him, I try to focus on preparedness because preparation is, I show him, he's a huge sports fan, so I show him Kobe quotes all the time as a way to get through to him. But the more you prepare, the less anxious you are, right? So when it comes to test prep, like, oh, I'm so nervous. I said, why? Did you study it? No. Well, go study. You won't be nervous, right? Just reminding him that preparation is so important and focusing on the small things. With the little kid, he's just a ball he runs the house. He's 5 now. He's such a happy kid. With him, I'm less able, I think, to impact his happiness because he's still so young. But I think with him, it's going to be more a little bit the opposite. You're so happy, like let's focus you a little bit so that you're not sad later in life when you've been just not pathing yourself toward a sustainable happiness, basically. So, yeah, focusing on each of the individual kid and trying to do something that's important.
Oh, awesome, Keith. That's so great. It really is like you have paid attention to each of them, and they can all learn from each other as well, because I think preparedness is so important, learning to fail. Yeah, these are all really, really good things. I know with my kids, we try to work on their independence, and because I tend to coddle them a lot. And
me too, 100%, yeah.
Also, one of my cousins who's very successful, she had 4 kids under the age of 2, and because she had triplets. Her kids have all turned out really great. And I was like, Janet, what's the story? And she's like, well, you just always have to award effort, not the success, right? Not the achievement, but the effort. And I think that's kind of what you're doing as well with learn to fail. It's okay. Be comfortable with it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, our kids are one giant experiment. To drive a car, you have to take a class and you have to, go take a test. Did you have a kid? You go to the hospital, they hand you this kid a day later and you walk out with no instruction manual, nothing, right? So they're our biggest experiment. And luckily for me, my oldest is like, he was interviewing for high schools because they required him to go through the interview process for his school. And they had the parents come in to interview the parents, and he said, well, tell me something about your oldest. And I said, pretty much he erases all my mistakes. Like he's just such a good kid that he's been able to like not be ruined by my mistakes as a parent. So it's a giant learning exercise. We make mistakes a ton. The good news is that kids are hard to break. And as long as you're doing it and focusing on showing them that you care about them and that you're supportive of them, I think everything else in the middle is just on the margin. Focusing on rewarding them for their effort is definitely smart. I like that. I never thought of it that way, but that's pretty much, I think, our approach to things. Control what you can control. And I guess the thing I always tell my kids, back to sort of full circle on the question, is don't waste your potential. Like maximize your potential. If you're a just genius, then you should be getting the best grades in the world and achieving and researching and doing the best things academically. If you're very athletic, you should be maximizing your potential there. If you're kind soul that people love to be around, maximize that, right? There's always somebody who's going to be better at you at any individual thing you do. The only thing that there's nobody in the world who's better at you at doing something, it's doing you. There's nobody better at it. So just do you, maximize what you have, and you've achieved the top of the top for what you can do in life. And I think that's a message that kids will learn, that I'm learning still as a young 40s. It's always a journey for everybody.
Preach on, Keith. Seriously, that is so good. That's what I call realizing popularity. And it's not about popularity is about people liking you outwardly, but realizing popularity is like loving yourself, knowing yourself, and living up to that potential. I think that's really cool that you're teaching your kids that, and that should be a lesson for all of us. You and Mauro wrote a children's book based on the Happy broadcast. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's a couple books. So we did a book at the end of 2020. That's this one. And that's just simply a almost coffee table. It's just all the good news of all the time we've done just put together, right? And that was something that publisher reached out to us and wanted to do it. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. It's great. Mara loves books, and it just wanted to do it. We just last year, which the book is actually coming out in March of 23, did an actual book, which is 150 facts. The Simon & Schuster it's a big publication, and it's basically 150 different positive facts with little habit tricks mixed into that kind of is an actual book with text that people can read about, more detail about the positive news that we've been putting out. Hopefully, we're working with a major publisher right now to try to figure out an adult book that we want to do, which is, again, using illustration and positivity as a way to push out. And I think that one might be more sort of habit driven and how to build positive habits and things you can do to kind of impact more of the stuff that we are doing in the current days versus just positive news. But yeah, so the book that's coming out in March, 150 Happy Facts. It's available online now as pre-order. It'll be in bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, it's on Amazon, etc. You can find it anywhere, Target, Walmart, etc. And that's something that we're proud of because it was the first book that I had done, because Mauro had already done this book before we had met. I just helped him with the contracts for it. But this is the first book I had done. And, we had all the illustrations, but the actual text we didn't have. I had to write 150 summaries of positive news. And I was like, I don't have time. There's no way to do this. And books don't pay very well unless they're a bestseller. So it's not like worth the money by any means. But I was like, this would be something. My son was about to go into high school and he was starting to show an interest in what I was doing with Happy Broadcast. And his friends were asking me a couple of things. And with high school these days, it's all about the project you do in high school, right? To help kind of show that you do work outside of academics and athletics, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to involve them. So I got to do this book with my son, which was awesome because I made him literally go through 150 or a portion of 150 news items, read the stories online, and then summarize the news. And so he did the first pass of this stuff, and then I went through obviously and expanded on it and edited before it went to the editors at the publisher. But so I got to do this book with him. Mauro provided these amazing illustrations, and my son and I and a couple of his friends got to work on the text, and we're super proud of it. Like I got my first, author copy the other day and took pictures with it and, put it up on social. My kid was super proud. He wouldn't show it, but he was snapping his friends, and I could tell he was excited about it. So yeah, that's the book that we're very proud of.
Oh, go out and get that book. It's too bad it's not available for Christmas, but Christmas 2023. Do they have a children's New York Times bestselling list? Or
they do. It'll be interesting. I mean, these guys, they've done a pretty good job of pushing it to the buyers. So we'll see. The reason why it's not happening in December, it was supposed to originally happen in December, but there's all sorts of supply chain issues on the book side from the shutdowns that are happening. And so they pushed it. Plus, we wanted to do something that's pro-environment, so recyclable paper, all that kind of stuff is important. So it delayed it a little bit. And then the buying season, thanks so March, is the official launch. But we'll see. If the last book we did, we donated 2,000 copies of this to schools. We'll do something cool like that again this time around. If we could somehow get the Happy Broadcast to be like a 2-minute part of everyday curriculum in elementary schools, like as a positive thing of the day, like that to me would be like the dream of the lifetime to actually as an accomplishment. So we'll see. Maybe the book happens to be that.
Hey, you put it out there to the universe, and it very well could happen, Keith. So I'm gonna push for that as well, because I think that we need more mental health in schools. And we need to teach it to kids who are having such big emotions and don't know these things yet.
The app, I think, is a great onboarding because it's so simple. I make my kids use it. It's their beta tester. They're the beta tester, basically. It's easy for them to just do a simple mood track every day, and I force them to do it. But after like 15, 20 days, they started to do it on their own. and they do it in schools now too, like gratitude journals and stuff like that. Like if each kid could just spend 2 minutes in the morning just focusing on how they're feeling and why, or at the end of the day, like that's a huge step forward, I think, in terms of getting them to be very conscious of their feelings throughout their day and their life, which a lot of us don't naturally have as adults. We need to do it as kids. So.
Okay, so for all the listeners, you have our voices in your ear. Do this with your family. Do it with your children. You can even do it, with your friends, with your parents. Go check out the whole app. WHOLE.
Yeah, GETWHOLE.co. It'll get you there, or you can just look on the app stores and find it, or go to our happybroadcast.com. We link to it as well.
We'll get the full list of what we want our friend who's listening to do. But in the meantime, what is in the future for the Happy Broadcast and the whole app? Did I see something about a TV deal?
So we have a animated series concept pilot that's been developed and is being pitched right now. So I think they're actually I think Nick is the first people that they're pitching it to. I've done TV stuff in the past. Mauro actually was he was the creative director for Storybots, which is a kids show on Netflix. It's their biggest kids show, I think. Very difficult.
Okay, can we just pause right there and say, I love Storybots.
That's the spirit of Alice Brothers, and Mauro is a creative director. It was such a genius thing that they did when they did it back then. But yeah, Hollywood is difficult. Like, you can have the greatest piece of content, and if it doesn't check the box of what the buyer is looking for at that moment in time, it'll never get bought. There's tons of great content on there that doesn't get made, but we're out there doing it. It's a good concept with good creative, and so if someone bites it, we'll happily have that. But I think in terms of what's next, we have a roadmap for the app that is just decades long. It's a good place right now to spend some time, but for it to be sort of a daily part of everyone's lives, it needs more. And so we're working on things like a progressive happiness score that tracks all the things you do and helps you kind of see some progress, because people are more willing to keep doing things if they visually see the progress or feel the progress. Unlike physical health, where if you run every day and lift weights, you start to see your body change, physically, so visually see it. Mental health doesn't have that. There's no calorie metric or pounds on the scale metric that we can track that keep us motivated to do more of it, like there is with physical health, right? Like if I run, I burn 300 calories, great. That's a metric, right? Or if I lost 5 pounds, metric, right? Mental health doesn't have that. And that's why people don't spend as much time doing it. We are trying to create that metric, right? Trying to create happiness scores or points that show kind of based on how you're saying you're feeling after doing certain things, that show progress and then help you track it. Because that code, when that gets tracked and cracked, that's what's going to open up the desire of people to do more in their mental health and happiness. And so we have a ton of different things we're working on in the app to do that. There's some great products, like they're trying to do it, whether it's like mood rings or pulse checks or things that try to kind of show you metrics. But it's a tough one, and it's going to take us a long time to crack that code. That's where the focus is of us going forward, is just continuing to make the app something that becomes indispensable for people. And then at the same time, not straying from what we've been core at, which is finding positive things that help people feel better about what's happening around them. One last thing I'll say, there's all sorts of positive things out there in terms of content. Like there's cat videos that make people happy, dopamine bursts. Those are all great, and we encourage all of it. Our positivity in terms of our content is very different in one way. Everything we do is not focused on just that quick burst. It's focusing on highlighting impact. So whether it's the guy who planted the trees every day and has a forest, or the country who's creating flower beds on the top of their bus stops to create environments for bees, right? It focuses on positive news that shows action, because we feel that seeing that helps people be inspired to take action, right? Whether it's action for themselves to make themselves happier, or whether it's action to make society around them better. That's what we're going for with our positivity. It's not just, passive positivity. You see it and you're great and you move on. It's thought-invoking positivity that hopefully inspires. And so we'll continue to do that. And, we do it on TikTok now. We went from 0 to like a couple 100,000 people on TikTok in a matter of a month or two. We'll do it on the new channels that come out. But that's definitely a core part of the mission. And then all that audience will push to the app and see if they can find something there that's useful for their personal journey.
Awesome. That is so true, that the more that we see people shining their light, we see people doing things in the world, you're so right, the more likely we are to do those as well. And even if it's just microtransactions or whatever you might call it, where let me just pick up this piece of trash or smile at this person, it's going to make huge ripples on this planet, delivering happiness. And we really can create an oasis.
you go.
on Earth.
Appreciate
What
that.
do you want to leave our listeners with?
Make sure you do invest at least a few minutes a day on something that you're not currently doing for your happiness. And there's certain things that you may think can help happiness, but they're actually destructive, like watching a TV show as a way to unwind. It's good. If it helps, it's great. But it can also be just a coping mechanism, which is different than something active to help you. So find that thing, whether it's a walk, 10-minute walk. Like to me, that's been a life changer. I walk 5 miles a day now. I'm up to that and I do it every day. Find that little thing that opens up that new kind of channel of happiness that you haven't had before, because it's super important. Again, if you are willing to spend 8 hours a day working, 8 hours a day sleeping, 2 hours a day working out, you should be willing to spend 5 minutes a day focusing on your mental health and happiness. So I encourage everyone to do it.
I agree. And it's an interesting point you brought up about coping mechanisms. That's a whole nother episode right there. But really, we can create these more productive habits, like you were saying, like a breath work or a walk or a journal, even if it's before you veg out on the Netflix, just calming your body from within and then kind of getting the outward stimulation after that. So I've got a couple of my fun questions for you. Keith Bonnici, what is the song that's going to get you on the dance floor?
Oh my God.
You're like hearing that song, just running out with your hands over your head.
Oh my God, dude, that's like the wrong question for me. Is like, I like talk about anxiety. Being at a wedding is like the worst piece of that for me, because I'm just not a dance floor guy. But it would have to be something easy. It would have to be like a very easy where all you have to do is put your hands in the air. So maybe the YMCA or something like that. That would probably be the one that would get me out there and not feel too self-conscious about it.
Well, maybe you're more of like a take me out to the ball game kind of guy.
Yeah, there you go. Easy.
I have noticed that you've taken a lot of these, but if you had to narrow it down to what is the best vacation that you've ever taken?
Oh my God.
And you've had some epic vacations that I only know about through social media, and I'm always like, oh, post more pictures, because you have gone far and wide and exposed your children to a lot of things as well. So of all the vacations in your life, could you narrow it down to a best vacation?
Yeah, look, I was born in Malta, which is like a small island in the Mediterranean. I lived there till I was almost 10. My wife's family, her dad's Vietnamese, her mom's Belgian. So we come from that international space. And when we got married, she said she said she had two conditions. One was she wants 5 kids, which thankfully she came off of that after time. And then 2 was we have to travel. We have to take a vacation at least once a year. And it doesn't count unless we get on a plane. That was kind of a prereq. That was her, it was in the vows, I think. She definitely, I'm glad she did that, because there's nothing like exposing yourself to international stuff. I think my favorite, I have so many, it's hard, but I lived in China, so it's tough to say no to China. I think still to this day, it's probably Greece, Crete specifically. Malta was great too. Crete's probably the one, because it's fresh in mind. Like, Crete is it's Greece, which is amazing, but it's Greece before modernization. So it just feels like a very authentic the food is amazing, and go to amazing beaches, and it's got culture, it's got everything. So I think Crete was probably my number one vacation so far that we've had with the kids.
Oh, awesome. And that was recently too?
Yeah, Crete was this last summer, August. I've been to Greece before, but this was the first time to Crete. And it was also like, vacations, you don't remember so much the place as you remember the people you were with, right? And so I'm fortunate enough to travel with friends. Like the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've traveled with usually 2 other couples and their kids. So it's like 10 plus kids, 6 adults. It's a big party. And so that's the memories that I have. Like, I'll tell you one quick travel memory. We flew to Greece 3 years ago with 16 of us, 11 kids or 10 kids, 6 adults, or maybe it was 17, whatever. Our flight to Athens was supposed to be routed through Turkey, and the flight got canceled because of some of the plane stuff. And so we had to book like a month before our trip. Everyone was like, let's just book this one. It was like super expensive. It was like $1,500 or $2,000 per person. And I was like, no, there's this flight for $700 so per person. And it was Aeroflot through Moscow to Athens. And so it was like a 30+ hour flight on a crappy, and I made all of us do it. And we went, and we had like a 20-hour layover. You can't leave the airport. and there was a TGI Fridays at the airport. 16 of us, all exhausted, at a TGI Fridays. The miserable experience you could just define. Nobody would ever sign up for that. And to this day, I still think that's the best travel memory that any of those kids will ever have. Like they'll never forget that tired 15 hours. And I'm one of those, like, I'm more about the experience than I am about the place. Memories, good or bad, to me, it's about experience. So I'm going to make that my number one travel trip, that layover in Moscow on the way to Greece.
The TGI Friday is in Moscow. I love that. It was definitely not an Oasis. Gosh, this is just such a wonderful conversation. And I really am just feeling as if you are realizing your own popularity so immensely, that you are just creating something so special in this world. And I hope that you can keep doing that. Keep doing that. Please keep doing that, because the world needs you and Mauro.
Yeah, I plan on it. I'm doing it because it's fun and I'm enjoying it, right? So it's a lot easier to keep doing something when you're not miserable doing it, or you actually look forward to doing it. So it took me a while, but I'm here.
As an Irish person, I was thinking that Irish blessings are such a wonderful thing, and I made a special one for you. So it says, may good vibes be with you wherever you go, and your followers outnumber the shamrocks that grow. May your app downloads be many, and your bugs be few. May all the wealthy investors descend upon you. May confidence be with you. May your revenue be strong. May you find new media partnerships wherever you roam.
Love it. Love it. You hit all the spots that I wake up thinking about every day. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you so, so much. And Keith, you are just so wonderful. Keep it up, cutie.
Thanks so much, Megan. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. Wasn't Keith awesome? Do you remember I mentioned one thing in particular that really tickled my soul? In fact, I think I said blew my mind, but it tickled my soul too. And it was when Keith said, just live up to your potential. What? You can't be great at everything, but you can know your strengths and be really good at being you. This takes realizing popularity to a new level. Living up to your potential is what realizing your popularity is all about. So Keith, I'm going to be borrowing that from you from now on. Thank you so much. After this episode, I know you're going to want way more good news and gratitude in your life. The easiest things to do are go to thehappybroadcast.com. They've got it all. They've got newsletters, they've got podcasts, they've got a shop, and they're on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Oh my gosh. They have a link to the app on thehappybroadcast.com, but you can also go to gethold.co and find out more. If any part of this show tickled you or inspired you, please go leave a review, put 5 stars up there. If you've got 5 on it, thank you so much. Put 5 on it. You know what I mean? You got 5 on it? Okay. You know what I mean. Like it, subscribe it, tell a friend about it, share it, spread the love, and we can keep Megafesting together. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, for opening your mind to these ideas, and for just being you. Thank you. And remember, don't just manifest, Megafest!